Blog Talk Radio.
Choices, decisions, frustrations, and pain. Knowing I'm going to forget her someday. While I still can, I'll challenge all my loved ones, every friend, to look inside their hearts and understand that I will love them. I will love them while I still can.
Well, hello, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host and founder of Alzheimer's Speaks, Lori LeBay. I hope you're having a wonderful day. It's absolutely gorgeous here in Minnesota, which is nice because we've had an awful lot of storms and people have been without power and phones and cable for quite some time here. So hopefully you're all safe and sound where you're located. Before we start the show, I always like to just give people a little bit of background about what Alzheimer's Speaks is all about, because we're always getting new listeners. And bottom line, we are an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. We believe by joining forces and sharing our knowledge and just having these everyday conversations about life with dementia, that we together can remove the stigmas attached to memory loss and help those in the trenches get back their lives and live with purpose. Together, we can help everybody understand the true needs of this disease and remove those nasty myths and stigmas attached to dementia. At our core, we believe collaboratively we really can win this battle. I'm seeing so much progress made all around the world, and I absolutely love my job and the opportunity to talk to so many passionate people. And I have to, again, thank each and every one of our listeners because you play such an important role by taking the time to just tweet us and like us and share us on Facebook, emailing episodes to your friends, sharing them on LinkedIn, all the different platforms that are around there that just literally take a second of your time is making a big difference because you're getting these educational, informational conversations out to people who really, really need them. And I know that you're making a difference because Alzheimer's Speaks was recognized as the #1 influencer online for Alzheimer's according to ShareCare and Dr. Oz. And if you're not familiar with ShareCare, they are that's a company that was devised by Dr. Oz and Jeff Arnold, who used to own WebMD, and their goal is to be the best and biggest health and wellness website on the internet. So check them out. There's great conversations there, and they have all different types of categories kind of for the top 10 in industry categories. I also want to let you know that, one of my big goals here at Alzheimer's Speaks is really to remove the fear of this disease. I just don't think that it's appropriate anymore to scare people about this disease. I think it's time to give hope and to help people live with the disease, not as it. And that is part of our core mission here. So we, invite all of you to participate, and you can do that by utilizing the chat box and typing in a comment or a question, or you can call in live to the show at 714-364-4757. Again, that's 714-364-4757, and you'll be asked to push 1. That will get you into my waiting room so that I know that you're there. Now, I always like to highlight a couple of companies that I think are really important. And the first organization is Alzheimer's Disease International, because they are the organization of organizations all around the world. And so if you're looking for support anywhere in the world, go to Alzheimer's Disease International, and that is www.alz.co.uk, and you'll be able to find the closest association to you. I also, I'm kind of a music freak, and so I also like to mention Choral Health, because they have such a neat application called Music First, which you can actually download onto your phone and get music specific to the needs of the person with dementia. They also have a faith-based genre there as well. And then Alzheimer's Studies, and you can just go to alzheimersstudies.com, and you can find them on Facebook as well, has some trials that are out now with Tau. And Choral Health, I forgot to mention, is www.corohealth.com. We also get a lot of people dealing with Lewy body, and so if you happen to have Lewy body, there is an association specific just to that can really help you as well. And you can find them either on the website or on Facebook, but they just do a fabulous job as well. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and get the show moving along here. Our first guest, I think this is really exciting. We're going to be talking about the blondes versus brunettes. And we have two very special ladies with us today. In fact, I just found out both their birthdays are on Saturday, so we might have to sing them a little happy birthday song. The first person I want to introduce is Brianna Olson, and she is the brunette chair of the Alzheimer's Association's Blonde versus Brunette Twin Cities, which is in Minnesota here. She's a native of Minnesota who recently moved back with her boyfriend, Brandon, to help take care of her mother, who was diagnosed with early onset in 2007 at the age of 58. Brianna played 2 seasons for the Team Brunette in Washington, D.C., where she also served on the executive committee, and her boyfriend coached Team Brunette to a victory in 2011. So woo-woo for that. Since her mother's diagnosis, Brianna has become passionate about Alzheimer's advocacy and fundraising. In addition to serving in a leadership role for the Blondes versus Brunette Twin Cities, Brianna is also a member of the Alzheimer's Association Blondes versus Brunettes National Advisory Council, which meets regularly to discuss opportunities to expand the success of the Blondes versus Brunette Games across the country. Brianna works in government affairs, and she's finishing her master's degree from Johns Hopkins University, and she's a passionate Vikings fan. So welcome, Brianna. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you, Lori. We're just really excited to be here today.
Well, I'm just thrilled to have you. Let me get your cohort here introduced, and then we can start our conversation. Alyssa Kiske-Bartel is the blonde chair of the Alzheimer's Association Blonde versus Brunettes Twin Cities. She has strong ties to the Minnesota community since she was born and raised, and currently lives in the Twin Cities. Her dad was diagnosed with early onset at 56 and just entered hospice care after living with the disease for almost 8 years. This is Alyssa's first year with the Blondes versus Brunettes, but she has volunteered for the Alzheimer's Association for several years through the Walk to End Alzheimer's and different advocacy work. She recently attended the Alzheimer's Association Advocacy Forum in Washington, D.C., which is a fascinating thing to do. If you haven't done that, I highly recommend it. It's educational and it's inspiring, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful setting to boot. Alyssa resides here in St. Anthony, Minnesota with her husband and 3 kids, and she is working hard to tackle Alzheimer's. Welcome, Alyssa. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks, Lori.
Well, good. Before we start, I know you both have been touched by the disease, and I'm going to throw this first to Brianna, but it's kind of nice to hear a little more personal take on that. I think it just gives our viewers a little more insight to where you're coming from. So I'm going to pose this question to both of you, and we'll start with Brianna. Brianna, what was the most difficult part of this disease for you? What's been the most difficult piece?
Well, that is a tough question. I think probably watching my mother. She has always been really the strongest woman that I have ever known. She has raised both myself and my older sister. She's been a wonderful grandmother to my sister's kids. She was a nurse all of her life, and so she's always had that care, that very caring spirit about her where she would just do anything for anybody every single day of every hour of every week. And when she was diagnosed back in 2007, it was a really rough year for our family. Within just a couple months of one another, my parents first were going to the Twins game one night, crossing over the 35W bridge when it collapsed. So they were on the bridge and they survived the bridge collapse. And then, it was really crazy. Then just a couple weeks later, my dad was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and he has fought that and he has survived prostate cancer. And then my mom was diagnosed as the trifecta with Alzheimer's, and this is something that she will not be able to survive from since there is no cure. So I think it's she's doing great. She still lives at home. She's certainly progressing, but I think part of the hardest part of it is just seeing that she wants to do so much to still care for and take care of everyone around her whom she loves, and it's just more difficult on a day-to-day basis. And that's just her spirit and what her being is, and I know that she struggled with it, and that's pretty difficult to watch.
Yeah, you guys really got tramboozled on with all of that. I mean, none of those are little things, and to happen so close together, I would imagine that really makes you scramble, and then also really have to put things in perspective as well. So thank you for sharing that. How about you, Alyssa?
Well, my dad was diagnosed about 8 years ago, and we actually found out about a month after I got married. So we found out that his work had been kind of keeping it, not that he had Alzheimer's, but just that he was having trouble at work, a secret for a while. They were waiting until I got married, and then as soon as I got married, they gave my dad a letter, and so that's how we ended up going to the Mayo Clinic, and he got his diagnosis. So that was a rough year for us. My dad had a lot of personality changes that happened after he was diagnosed, and so we dealt with a lot of frustration and anger, and finding resources was difficult in the beginning. And I would say one of the hardest things about the diagnosis is that as soon as you figure out resources and able to kind of remedy one situation, it drastically changes, and you're challenged to find a whole new set of resources and answer a whole new set of questions. So that's always an ongoing challenge for our family. But other than that, just watching his dignity taken away and watching him slowly not be able to function has just been really traumatic to watch. So I'd say those are the hardest things on our end.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing this, and thank you both for your advocacy. I just think it's really exciting what you're doing, and how fun to have this game that you're playing. I'd like you to tell us, and I'll throw this to Brianna, what exactly is the Blondes versus Brunettes, and how did it get started?
So Blondes versus Brunettes is a volunteer-driven event focused towards young people, to bring young professionals together to support the Alzheimer's Association. It was organized around a flag football game back in 2005, so it's in its maturity now. And it's kind of started where there were a group of women out in Washington, D.C., who were all trying to figure out a way to honor the father of one of the friends who was diagnosed and had passed away from Alzheimer's. And one of their favorite pastimes, her and her father, was watching football. So they thought it would be a nice way to honor her father by creating a football game. And as they were exploring the idea of what they might do, they looked around the room, around their own group of friends, and saw that they were about split between blondes and brunettes. So they decided that's how they would determine who was on which team. They went out. They raised $10,000 in $10,000 in that first year, which is amazing. And it's since now grown since 2005. It's in over 30 cities across the country, and has collectively raised more than $3 million to support local chapters of the Alzheimer's Association.
Wow, that's fantastic! $3 million. That's a lot of chunk of change, and I love how many cities it's in. And you know the concept. I think one of the fun things with it too is that you've kept it light and you've kept it fun, and not so complicated. Just in terms of okay, you're blonde, you're brunette. Oh, we need another one. Go dye your hair. I suppose might even occur with that to get on the right team. I don't know, but that's just a really neat way to be able to engage people. Can you tell me kind of average age? And Alyssa, I'll throw this out to you, of people that get involved.
Most people are in their 20s and 30s that are getting involved as far as players are concerned, but we do have a lot of other volunteers that are needed, and a lot of times those, we even have kids that will get involved, so we'll have them volunteer on game day, and we have people that may not want to play that become what we call super fans or cheerleaders, and they can do their own fundraising. And they volunteer at our events, helping with setup, takedown, all sorts of those, anything that may need to be done. And then on game day, we just need tons of volunteers. So the players, though, typically range from, we do require them to be 21, since some of the events are held at bars, but they typically are in the 20s and 30s.
Okay. And if somebody wanted to volunteer to help on the sidelines or set up, or what I would imagine you need a ton of different categories. Maybe you need a water girl. I don't know. Those types of things. How would they get a hold of you? What's the best way? And,
well, they can always... They can always email us at bvbtwincities@gmail.com. And we also do have a Facebook page, and that's Blondes versus Brunettes Twin Cities, that they can find us on as well. If they let us know how they want to get involved, we'll add them to the list, and as we have the volunteer sign-up set up, we will definitely reach out to them. And then they can also sign up if they do want to be a cheerleader, a super fan. And then we also do have, the coaches are all male because we wanted to make one position. Since the players can only be female, we wanted to offer something exclusive to men. So our coaches are men. And they also have to fundraise. they can do that through reaching out to us on Facebook or through that email address at bvbtwincities@gmail.com.
Okay, great. And so you do have, one of my questions was going to be asking if you have cheerleaders or mascots. And is there a mascot, Brianna?
We don't have a mascot quite nailed down yet, though I know a lot of people have pets. They have dogs, so there probably is going to be a pet showdown of who's the mascot, and we'll see. But we don't have anything set. We're welcoming ideas if anyone has them to post on our Facebook page.
Okay. And, if you go to their page and like the page, that would be great, and share it with your friends. Again, just another way to just help raise awareness. It just takes a click, not much of your time, not going to cost you anything, but will have a big impact. And, to be able to be involved with something like this would just be, I think, a fun experience. Whereabouts is this going to be held, Brianne?
The game day is on October 12th. We just kicked off our season on the 21st, which is the Alzheimer's Association's longest day. From here till then, we'll have tryouts, we'll have practices, and then we kick off on game day October 12th. The location is at Kloss Stadium, which is at Hamline University, who has graciously agreed to host us for our inaugural game. We're very excited to be able to be there.
Oh, that's neat. Now, did I see that you're having a draft party as well?
We sure are, yes. So we had our kickoff party on the 21st, like I just said, and then we will host tryouts with the team. There won't be any cuts, so anyone who's listening that might want to come out and try out for the team, we aren't basing that whatsoever on skill. Most people are coming without any football experience. We're just looking to make sure that people are committed to the cause. So there are 6 opportunities to try out. To make the team, you show up and attend 3 of those, and then you meet the $250 fundraising minimum by draft day. And our draft party is July 25th. It's at Glick's in downtown Minneapolis from 6:30 to 8:30. And then both game day and the draft party are open to all fans, supporters, anyone who wants to get involved, learn more, or just support the cause.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that'll be fun. Now, when I've never done a draft party. I like football, but I'm not into the fantasy football or following. I know that it's very involved. Can you explain what a draft party is? How that goes down, I guess, and what actually happens, Brianna?
Sure, yeah. So I was involved in 2 draft parties when I played for Team Brunette out in Washington, D.C. Really, it's just an opportunity to socialize and network. I think a big part of what you get from being involved in this is a great group of friends who are all passionate about the cause, and they really, truly become some of your closest friends. So it's an opportunity for people to continue to build that relationship. But then a lot of the fun of it is just meeting the players. So we'll literally have someone there as an announcer, and there's a stage, and we will call up players one by one to welcome them to either Team Blonde or Team Brunette if they met the two requirements needed to make it onto the team. So just a fun event to get us all excited and geared up for the season.
Okay. And then do we want to mention what the requirements are for players? Is that of interest to your listeners, Lori?
I think so, definitely.
So we require every player and coach to raise a minimum of $350. You need to raise $250 by draft day, which is the July 25th date that Brianna was just talking about, and then another additional $100 by the game day. Other than that, you have to attend at least half of the 6 tryout practices, and you have to be at a reasonable amount of practices throughout the season. So, and the coaches will kind of define what that's going to be. But those are the ways that we, make sure that people stay committed and engaged along the way, and people really step up to the plate and really get involved and show their commitment.
Okay, wonderful. Are you going to, I would think the press would just love something like this. Have you gotten much response from them, or have you not even really approached them yet? Or
Yeah, we recently got a public relations sponsor that's helping us out. But we have already been on the KARE 11 Saturday morning show. We've been on another internet radio show, and recently Twin Cities Live approached us to be on their show as well. So we're still in the planning stages on that one. But we are
cool.
getting attention. Yeah.
Wonderful. And you should. And you should. So if we have any listeners out there that have any contacts that might be interested, please, get a hold of these ladies. And that's another thing that you can do. When you're listening to any of our shows, if you've got some contacts and people you think might be interested, make the connection. Again, very simple to do, but reach out and make the connection. Because, again, this is not something that is a one-person show. We're all tied together on this, and dementia is affecting all of us, not just individuals, not just families, but our communities and our society at large. And so it's very important for us to work together as a group. Brianna, can you mention a few of the other cities that were involved in the Blondes versus Brunettes, just so our listeners are, all over the world? But it would be nice for them to know, because maybe they could contact a local chapter, or maybe they want to start something up in their own neck of the woods, or even out of the country, and follow
certainly
suit here.
Happy to do that. So it started in Washington, D.C. What kind of happens is the women who play end up, going around and settling into different locations, and they can't imagine once being a part of BVB not having that remain a part of their life, so they sprout out to a different city and decide to launch a game there, or they may have a sister in another city who watches their sibling play in a different place and decides to launch one in a new city. So right now, a few of those cities include Austin, Charlotte, Chicago, Buffalo, New York City, Dallas, Houston, Denver, Los Angeles, Kansas City. They're really all around the country, and I know that if you go to the Alzheimer's Association, you can find Blondes versus Brunettes online, and they're looking to put up a list with links to each of those locations. I'm also more than happy, by serving on the National Advisory Council, if anyone wants to know if there is a game in their area, they can send an email to that bvbtwincities@gmail.com account, and I'd be happy to put them in touch or send them information for a game near them.
Okay, that would be wonderful. Is there like a national website for these or not?
There is, and they're continuing to work on developing it. So the games have found, obviously, with so much success, raising $3 million. The National Association has now put some effort behind being able to support Blondes versus Brunettes from the national level. All the money goes to the local chapters, and we have great support here from the Minnesota North Dakota chapter. But since the money goes to the local chapters, it's mainly, up until just the last couple of years, been supported by those more local organizations. So National is doing a great job building it out, and we continue to look to do more from the national perspective. They definitely have a Blondes versus Brunettes Facebook page where they post information about the games and events that are happening throughout the country. So that would be another great place for your listeners to go find more information.
Wonderful. Well, it sounds like a lot of fun. Now, as far as seating and things like that, is there a fee to get into the games, or is it free? I would imagine that there's a cost to come watch the games in order to raise funds, but maybe I'm wrong. Can you explain that?
We're recommending a $25 donation, and that can be done through any player's fund fundraising page, or it can just be a donation to Team Blonde or Team Brunette. And then what we are doing is we're keeping track of all those names, and when you come on game day, we'll have a list, and you can also make a donation at the door as well. So there isn't a ticket as you would have for a normal game, but we are asking for donations.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. And now you had mentioned cheerleaders. Do you typically have formal cheerleaders, or is that kind of pulled together, like the teams are as well, or have you had cheerleaders or maybe even bands, come to offer to play and cheer you on?
Yeah, we are still.
Oh, go ahead.
We are still working on some of those details, but we are currently booking a band that will play at halftime. And then we are going to work on finding somebody to hopefully sing and announce at the game. So those are some of the things we're working on. Cheerleaders, the position of cheerleader isn't as traditional as a normal cheerleader. We're not really expecting people to come out and do a routine, but yeah, unless they want to. That could be arranged. But it's more, when we say cheerleader, we're more looking for people who want to start a fundraising page, want to raise some money, and then also want to volunteer at some of the events and help out when needed.
Okay, so you're not...
The cheerleaders do need to declare their allegiance to either Team Blonde or Team Brunette.
Yes.
And so they're welcome to attend any of the practices to help out with anything, should they have the time or desire to do so. And then we normally will do, in D.C., and I think we'll plan on doing that here as well in the Twin Cities, the day before the game, we'll get together with the team and do a team dinner, and all players, cheerleaders, super fans, coaches supporting that particular team will be together, and we'll make signs and give some fun things to the cheerleaders so that they can get out there and support their respective teams on game day.
Okay. So cheerleader isn't necessarily a yay, rah, rah doing cheers to the crowd then. It's really just a super fan more. Am I reading that right?
Yep.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that I was on the right page with that. Now, are you both looking at in terms of, how do I want to say this? In terms of your group, is it just the two of you that are in charge, or do you have a full board that assists you with this? And
we have. Sorry, go ahead, Lori.
No, I was just going to throw it to one of you, but go ahead. That's fine. You're jumping in, so that's
great.
Oh,
sorry. We do have a full board that supports us. So in addition to the two of us, we have another 6 people that are in charge of different areas. So we have somebody in charge of events. We have somebody in charge of game day operations. Someone leads sponsorship. Someone leads, is the liaison between us and the Alzheimer's Association. And we are always looking for people to serve on those specific committees. So if anyone that is listening today or knows someone that wants to serve on any of those committees, they can always reach out to us through that bvbtwincities@gmail.com account.
Okay, and that's B as in boy, V as in Victor for the verse, and then B again for brunettes, correct?
Right.
For blondes versus brunettes.
Yeah.
Yep. So when you say it fast, sometimes the B's and the V's are hard to tell apart there. So I just wanted to clarify that for people. And how long does the game usually last, and what time will it start? Do you know those things, or?
We're nailing down the exact start time. It'll probably be right around the 1 o'clock in the afternoon time frame on October 12th. The game is 15-minute quarters, and then we'll have a halftime show. We'll open it up in the beginning by announcing players and singing the Star Spangled Banner. We also will have family-friendly activities at the game so that kids can come, and they probably can't sit on a bleacher for an hour and a half to watch all of the activities happening. So plenty to do. But I would say all in all, it'll be right around an hour and a half to 2 hours with all things said from the beginning of the program to the end.
Okay. You know who I was thinking would be great if you were looking for a singer is, I can't remember his last name, but it was Nicholas something, and he was on The Voice. And he's local here from Minnesota, and I know that he used to do a lot of singing. His dad was at Oak Meadows, where a friend of mine worked. And so I know that he's done just a ton of volunteer work. I saw him on TV, I don't know, probably a few weeks ago, and they interviewed him, and he said he was back home and he was just doing, he's big into giving back. And so he might be a great one to call, and I think he'd have a really good draw for you as well if you could work into his schedule. I can't remember his name. Do you guys remember his name at all? Who I'm referring to, his name was Nicholas. He's got a really unique voice and a real large following now after he was on The Voice.
Yeah, we do know who you're talking about, and actually we have contact with him. So we are reaching out to him. He, hopefully we can get him involved in some capacity, but yeah, we are working on it. We're pretty much reaching out to everyone we can at this point to see who's interested in getting involved. So a lot of people are saying yes right away. So I'm anticipating the spots are going to fill up quickly.
Wonderful. So listeners, again, if you've got some ideas or you've got some connections, let the girls know, and help with this process. That would be a really nice way to be able to give back and make a difference, on a whole there for that. Are you planning at all for the following year for a follow-up game? Have you gotten that far yet? I would imagine that's something that you'll probably be booking fairly quickly after this one if you haven't already.
Yeah, we're planning on making this an annual event. This isn't a one-time thing. This is just the starting point, in our opinion. So we're already having people that for some reason aren't able to get involved this year. Pregnancy seems to be a real big reason why people aren't able to play this year. But we always remind them there's always next year. So yeah, we do plan on doing this every year in the future. So hopefully until we find a cure.
That would be nice if that rolled around quicker than planned, and with raising the funds, can only help with that. That's absolutely wonderful. I think this is just a really, really cool idea. Do any of the cities ever have more than one game or at different levels? I'm just wondering if there was interest even for a high school team, or that age to be able to do this, because a lot of younger kids are starting to have parents that are dealing with this as well, wanting to be involved. And has there been any discussion in terms of expanding it? And I know that you wanted, 21 and over because some, dealings are in bars and things, and I understand that, but of doing something for a different demographic as well, because I could see that as being something that would be embraced too. And it'd be a great way to, do some awareness at that school level. So,
yeah,
Brianna
definitely. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I think there's all options are on the table. When BVB started back in 2005, there really wasn't a big presence for even young professionals to step up and get involved in a way that was kind of fun and interesting, that would bring in people that wouldn't necessarily normally get involved with this sort of thing. So right now the games, there's only one game per city, but as it's growing in popularity, I would imagine that there will be some expanded games perhaps maybe even a national tournament where we could play against some of the other cities. A few of us on the National Council have talked about how fun that might be. In fact, even in one of the cities in Texas, they have so many people come to tryouts that the first year participants are redshirted and they have to raise money and attend a certain amount of things to be considered to play for the next year. So that's a great problem for that city to have. Perhaps at one point they might split up and do a couple games or have a couple squads or do a tournament. But at this point it's just one per city. And I think you make a very important point, Lori. There's someone who will be playing on Team Brunette whose mother recently passed away from Alzheimer's, and when she was diagnosed, her son, the Brunette player's brother, was in high school, and there are more and more young people who are impacted by this disease, and they have fewer people who are in the same situation as them. So I think the more we can do to make sure that we're reaching out and including the even younger generation than what we're looking at here as young professionals, and whatever it might be that would be most interesting to them or most appealing to that demographic, I think it's a great thing to keep in mind and see how we can all help with that.
Yeah, and then I just had one other thing to add.
Sure.
So the Blondes versus Brunettes is a big fundraiser, and it actually falls under a group called the Young Champions. And the Young Champions are a group of young professionals, typically in their 20s and 30s, that are doing advocacy work and doing fundraisers to try and find, to end Alzheimer's. So it's important for us to mention them because in the past, there hasn't been a whole lot of resources for people to get involved that are younger. It's been for us that are in our 20s and 30s, or even in our teens that are finding out our parents have Alzheimer's. The only options were to go to these older groups where the issues that they're dealing with are quite different. So the Young Champions has been really great in pulling young people together and giving them a voice. And then also they even have their own support group. So if any of your listeners know of somebody, in their teens or 20s or 30s that could benefit from a support group, they can, again, reach out through that bvbtwincities@gmail.com, and we'd be happy to put them in touch with that group as well.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be great because I just think there's just such a huge need, and it would be a great way to embrace other ages. You could even do different age groups because I'm in my 50s, but I think I'm still in my 30s.
Right.
And so you could get different age groups out there, and even grandkids and stuff in terms of playing flag football. I mean, they would be just a hoot and a half to watch, and are dealing with it. It could be really interesting to do intergenerational and have different levels. I know that makes things a lot more complicated, but it could be a really cool day for a family to be involved in all those different levels of the game as well. So my mind always spins with different things. And it'd be a great way to be able to introduce it into the schools possibly too, and to combine it with an educational program.
One thing we are kind of playing with for this year, we're not sure if it's going to happen or not, is during halftime, having kids come out and play football during halftime. So we are always looking for ideas like that. So any ideas that your listeners may have, we would love to hear about them, and we'd love to implement as many of them as we possibly can.
Yeah, the other thing I'm just thinking from a marketing standpoint that would be kind of fun is, we used to have the Homer hankies, but given you're playing flag football, would be to have a hanky that people could purchase, for that, just to wave and do, maybe a yellow one and a brown one for the blondes versus brunettes in the game, and that would be I think that would be kind of a fun thing to be able to have. It'd be good visual, be a reminder for the next year. And how people with the Homer hankies, and granted that was on a bigger scale, but I mean people save them, and it's about creating memories and so forth. So I don't know, just a thought with that. So I just think this is so exciting. What does, I'll throw this to Brianna first, what does your family think about your involvement in this?
Oh, they have been so supportive. My parents actually, the 2011 season when I was playing out in Washington, D.C., my sister and I bought them plane tickets so that they could come out and actually watch the game and cheer on Team Brunette, of course. But they are just, I think it's interesting when young people have a parent who's diagnosed, sometimes the roles start to switch a bit and you want to be able to care for your parent. And I think that they're very proud. They were at the kickoff rally and shared their story with all of the players and coaches who were there on the 21st. So they're also very involved. And my mom and dad are so brave, I would say. They have been outspoken advocates to talk about their experiences, and I know that's something that isn't easy, so they're proud of what we're doing.
Very cool. And was that Brianna that just talked?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And Melissa, how about you? What does your family think about all this?
I don't really know what my dad thinks about it, just because he's so advanced in the disease at this point. A lot of times we're not even sure he recognizes us. But my mom definitely is proud and is pretty much bursting at the seams to tell anyone that will listen about blondes versus brunettes and what Brianna and I have been able to do so far with it. So, yes, there's definitely a lot of positivity that's coming out of it. And actually, even my brother's involved. He's on our planning committee as well. So she has two of us that she gets to talk about nonstop, which is somewhat embarrassing for us.
Well, and Laura, you also mentioned in the beginning just talking about your radio program, and part of the goals that you have for your show is to try to get over the stigma that carries with Alzheimer's disease. And
yep.
I think that was really moving to hear you talk about that in the beginning for me. My mom, after her diagnosis, some of her closest friends walked away and haven't come back to support her. And so I think part of this, too, that kind of made her a bit uncomfortable and frankly embarrassed by having the disease and almost thinking that it was a fault of her own. And so I think trying to get out there and by having her even being out and having a voice and coming to our kickoff rally and thanking the players and everything, she is, I think it's enabled her to kind of find her own voice and be able to get out there. And I know a passion of hers now, too, is to try to break through this stigma and show that this is something that a lot of people are dealing with, and we can't be embarrassed about it or hide behind it any longer. We need to get out there and talk about it. So,
very,
for all the work
very true.
Yeah, thank you. Because I know my mom had a similar situation as well, where she was surprised at which of her friends really stepped up to help out with my dad and which friends kind of disappeared. So, yeah, it definitely is wonderful to have a platform like your radio show to be able to talk about it and to actually give people information instead of just continuing the rumors of how it works. And yeah, so thank you very much.
Yeah, well, it's very, very important. I don't know if what you're doing kind of for openings or anything with that, but when we were talking about awareness, one of the things I was thinking, again, from another marketing angle, and maybe you guys already do this, but would be to have little footballs made up and have a tribute wall. And as people walk into the stadium, they can put who they're there for. And that might be a really, again, a cool visual. Show the numbers and the importance of everybody who's been touched. And it doesn't make any difference if, a family of 5 comes in and all puts down the same person. It just shows they have been touched and how critically important it is for us to make a difference with this. Because, one person affects so many. And we've got to get back to the core of our relationships, and we have to help people, live with this disease. I had the other day, one of the TV channels was out interviewing myself in our memory cafe, and I'm going to get teary now. And I just got teary. And they're like, Lori, why? Because it's so important for these voices to be heard. And it takes that bravery, to come out of the closet and to say, I don't want to be alone anymore. People need to understand this disease. And I'm just so proud of so many people all around the world coming together to make this difference. And so thank you guys for what you're doing, because it's so, so needed. And I don't mean to get so emotional, but I just, I'm so invested in this, and I've seen how many people have been crushed by this disease and how many people whose, life it has taken over. And we need to change that. We need to be able to have fun and show hope and bring people together as a community. No one should ever be embarrassed of having a disease. I mean, that's an asinine thing that happens in our country and around the world. And, there's no excuse for that, for people to feel that way. And that has to change. Over in the UK, they actually look at the disease as a disability, not a disease. And so their attitude is, how do we build ramps, for dementia? How do we make it so people can live with dementia? And they come at it from a whole different angle than what we do here in the U.S. And I think that it's a brilliant way to look at things and, to make a difference that is so, so needed. So again, I thank you so much. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love your football idea to honor all of those who are impacted by Alzheimer's. I think we might incorporate that into game day. We also have the idea for all players whomever they may be playing for, if they have a connection to the disease, to put their name on the back of their jersey on game day. And we also have a sponsorship opportunity for names on the yard markers on the fields. So if anyone, cool. And we also are welcoming corporate sponsors. So if anyone has connections or wants to help out in those ways too. But yes, we definitely want to make sure we honor all those people out there.
Oh, wonderful. And I just had a caller, and I was just going to pull them in, and then they hung up. So if you're back out there, 426, come on and call back in, and we'll try to get you into the show here. I apologize. Oh, they're back. So let me pull them in. And hi, you're live on the show. Can you state your name, please?
Oh, am I the one you're talking to?
Yes, you are the one I'm talking to.
Okay.
And so who is this?
Brent Olson, Brianna's dad.
Oh, okay. Well,
hey, Dad.
Welcome, Brent.
Hi.
You have to be awfully proud of her.
Oh, not just her. All these people that are involved, these young women, and that it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. They're wonderful, wonderful. Blondes versus brunettes, one of the teams are going to win the game, but in the big scheme of things, that really doesn't matter. It's what they've done collectively to fundraise, to get this money together for the local, our local association, Alzheimer's Association. If it's $5,000 they raise or, $100,000, it just gives more money available to the association to provide, benefits and, just resources for those with the disease and for the, the caregivers. So it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It sounds like it's going to be just a wonderful, wonderful event. And I was connected with Alyssa originally through Jan Hughes, who was a member of our Memory Cafe. And so again, otherwise I wouldn't have known that you guys even existed. There's so many different things going on, and these connections are so important that we talk and that we help raise everybody's voice to what's going on. So I hope we get a lot of people getting involved with this here in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities area, as well as around the country. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. It's going to be a fun event, and step up to the plate, make a difference. It's very important. Well, thank you for calling into the show. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, Brett?
Well, no, I'm just, it's amazing. You got to realize the person that has the disease, they're still the same person. It's the disease. It's not the individual. It's not catchy. Don't abandon someone with this disease. That's probably been my wife's biggest heartbreak. Our lifelong friends that have just gone.
Yeah, and it's probably the most common and the least talked about, aspect of this disease or symptom of this disease, and it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. We have to educate people and remove the fear and get them to understand that, my mom's had this disease for 30 years, and she's been in a nursing home for 12, and she's been in her end stages for 4, and she can't do anything for herself, but she is still in there, and she can still communicate with me, and she's taught me to communicate on different levels I didn't know existed. And so for me, that's really been a gift, and totally reframed my life. So I think, I thank you for all you're doing, and for calling into the show and being a great caregiver, to your wife, and supporting your daughter and the team through this. These are all big things. These are all big things you're doing. So thank you so much for calling in, Brent.
Oh, yep. It's my pleasure.
Okay.
He's a wonderful kid.
Okay, great. Thank you. Girls, I want to get back to you and ask you each, in wrapping up here, and I'll throw this to Brianna first, what gifts, if any, has this disease brought to you? How has it changed your life? Excuse me?
I'm sorry. The first thing that came to mind was perspective. I've always been very kind of career-driven and focused to lead a kind of life that I saw for myself, and I still am career-focused, and I still am doing a lot of the things that I've always thought were important, but also now being able to move home and care and support for my mom, I find that it's an honor to be able to give back and care for a woman who gave so many years of herself to support me and to raise me. So I think a lot of that is probably perspective on what matters, what's most important in life.
Okay. How about you, Alyssa?
I had a somewhat similar experience to Brianna, where I was very career-driven. I had a wonderful marketing career with Ameriprise Financial, and when my dad got diagnosed, I continued to work, but my husband and I, soon after finding out about his diagnosis, decided to have children because I was the only one in our family in a position to provide grandchildren at that time. So, and now I have 3 wonderful children that I stay at home with. So, it, like Brianna said, it puts a lot of perspective on life and what's important, and to us, that's family. The other thing I just wanted to add is that I have met so many amazing people through this, and Brianna is definitely on the top of that list, and she, has become such a great friend and resource through all this, and I probably never would have run into her otherwise. So there are a lot of really positive things that come out of this, but sometimes they're hard to find at the very beginning. So
agreed.
Yep, very, very true. But and I always think that that's such an important way to frame it. It is tough, but there's always a lesson in everything that we do. And so, what have you learned? And there's some huge learning lessons wrapped in this disease. I personally think that it's here to pull the world together to work as one and be collaborative, just with funding and, all of the critical things that we don't have the time, we don't have the money, and we don't have the resources to do alone, and we can't be proprietary on this anymore. And, I think that's going to make a whole shift in terms of how the world does business together, and can filter down, or actually I think it's filtering up. I think it's starting at a very grassroots level and forcing the change in many, many levels. So, well, thank you, girls, so much for being with us today. It's very, very exciting, and we'd love to, hear more from you as things progress. Alyssa, what are the best contact information that we want to give people again? If you want to highlight that for us.
Yeah, again, reaching out to us through Facebook is one of our main ways right now, and that's Blondes versus Brunettes Twin Cities. Another way is you can always email us at B for Blonde, V for Versus, B for Brunette, Twin Cities at gmail.com, so BVB Twin Cities at gmail.com. Otherwise, if you do go to the Alzheimer's Association website and do a search, you can find the fundraising pages that we all have up. They're very similar to the ones that they do for the walk. So but we all have, in the Twin Cities right now, we all have our fundraising pages up, or they're going to be up soon. So, and you can choose to support one of the teams or a specific player. So,
okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you both for taking the time to be with us today. I think it's just absolutely fascinating. Go to that Facebook page, like them, sign up, get involved. And if you've got connections for them, or if you've got ideas, share them. Don't keep them to yourself. It's time to work together, because we will win this battle. So thank you both again so much for being part of the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys take care now. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
I'm going to just kind of give you some mid-program highlights before I pull in our next guest here. Our last radio show, if you had not listened to that, was very interesting. It was about, do you need a caregiver coach? And then information on how an occupational therapist can really help people with dementia at all stages of the disease. So if you haven't listened to that, you might want to go back into the archives and check that out. Our next program coming up is going to be very interesting. Gary LeBlanc has been working just so diligently on this program, and it's going to be about a wristband program for hospitals and for people with dementia. We are also going to be having a special segment that will be 2 hours totally on dementia in driving coming up as well. And as far as our dementia chats, it was supposed to happen yesterday. I ended up canceling that. I was traveling in Chicago, working with Verizon on some things, and so I was not able to attend on that. But our next dementia chats will be on July 9th, and that's always a fascinating webinar where I interview people with dementia. So feel free to partake on that. I also like to highlight a few of the blogs that were posted since our last get-together. There are 2 blog posts on Jiminy Wicket, which is a croquet game that's very adaptive for people with dementia, and we played it here last Friday on the longest day with our Memory Cafe group and also Arthur's Residential Care, and we just had an absolute blast. So there's a couple of videos on the blog that'll show you how the game is played. Very, very fun. So check that out. There's also tips for traveling, 7 tips for traveling. There's a post about the Meeting of the Minds with Dr. Richard Taylor, which again is a webinar series, and he talks about hospitalization and dementia because he was just in the hospital fighting his cancer. Richard also has dementia. He's a very renowned speaker throughout the world, and so that's a great thing that you can check out. There's also information on casting your vote because Congress is going to be deciding on some research funding that was from Alzheimer's, Us Against Alzheimer's, so you can check that out. And then there are 2 fabulous videos that are about breakthrough dementia treatment over in the UK that you might want to take a peek at. I just found both of them very, very fascinating. So let me go ahead and introduce our next guest here. This bio is a little bit long, but stay with me with it because, typically I try to trim them back, and I just couldn't because Terry Woodford is just one incredible man. In 1969, Terry started out making music for heartsick and impressionable teenagers in Alabama. During his career as a hit record producer, music publisher, and recording engineer, songwriter, he supplied music and songs for a lot of top acts like the Commodores, who I love, Jimmy Buffett, the Temptations, Alabama, Wayne Newton, Barbara Mandrell, the Supremes. So this guy is really connected and very, very good at what he does. Terry's also served on the Board of Governors of the Nashville chapter of the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences twice. He is co-founder and has taught courses for the first 4-year degree program in the country to teach the ins and outs of the music business at the University of North Alabama. Many of his songwriters and students that he mentored are really well-respected leaders in the recording industry now. From rock and roll to rockabye, at the request of a daycare provider, Terry took on a challenge to produce music to help kids sleep at nap time. His idea was to record an actual human heartbeat and use it as a rhythm for traditional nursery songs. And much to his surprise, when he tested this in hospital newborn nurseries, the nurses reported, get this number, 94% of crying babies were calmed to sleep by the music in less than 2 minutes. No more throwing your kids in the car and trying to get them to sleep on a bumpy ride. Later that year, he visited a cardiac intensive care unit where the nurses had started playing the heartbeat lullabies to help infants and children get rest and sleep that they needed in order to heal after surgery. And the intensive care nurses were anxious to show him how playing his simple lullabies with the heartbeat rhythm could miraculously just calm a frightened and agitated baby in just a few seconds. That experience changed his life forever. In 1987, he left the music business and devoted himself full time to developing and spreading the use of heartbeat lullabies. Now, this is something I had never heard of until Terry and I connected on LinkedIn, and I just found it fascinating. The music has provided to be a godsend for not only Terry and his role, but for thousands of care providers and millions of frazzled, sleep-deprived parents. The research-backed recordings have been used in over 8,000 hospitals and special care centers to calm infants and children and now adults. His nurturing method to get babies to stop crying and sleep through the night has sold over 3.4 million copies. Over 1.5 million have been purchased by the military, health departments, hospitals, child abuse prevention organizations to give at-risk parents. It's estimated that well over 20 million people either went to sleep to his heartbeat lullabies or watched a child go to sleep to one of these recordings. Fans may not remember the name of the CD or Terry's name, but they never forget the recording's distinct sound and how it works. And I can attest to that because Terry sent me a sampling, and when I put it on, I was really, I wasn't sure what to think because the heartbeat is very, very loud with this, and we're going to play an example for you as we go forward here with this conversation. But I can tell you I slept like a baby. I've also given it to a couple of friends who have used it, and one said, she just kind of giggled thinking, this is never going to work. And she also told me it's the best night's sleep she's ever had. So, this recording is really quite phenomenal, and we have so many people that are sleep deprived. We're stressed out. We're ill. Our minds are going a million hours a minute, and I think Terry can really make a huge, huge difference in terms of helping people sleep that might be dealing with insomnia, post-traumatic stress, dementia, Alzheimer's, chronic pain. It's just almost hypnotic in and of itself. So welcome, Terry. How are you today?
Well, I'm doing good. I'm a little embarrassed. I shouldn't send you such a long bio.
Well, I normally try to cut it back, but I just thought it was really important for people to know who you are, because you have such a credibility in terms of your history, and to make that life change in terms of what you were doing and really moving forward in this whole other area, I think says a lot about who you are. And where you come from. And I think it's very important for people to understand as well that this doesn't just help dementia patients. I mean, it helps pretty much anybody who's having a difficult time sleeping. And I think it's a battle that is kind of like dementia, not talked about. People don't like to really say that they're not sleeping well, and I think we get used to functioning not as good as we could when we don't sleep because we don't think that there's anything that we can really do about it. And so very excited to have you on the program today. Can you tell us, Terry, have you ever personally been touched, in your life with a family or friend who's been touched by dementia at all? Has that ever come into play for you?
My grandmother had dementia, and of course, to me, she was a saint. And I remember seeing her for the last time in the hospital, and she could talk to me for maybe 20 seconds, and then she was talking about something else. The other thing is she was such a wonderful person, but my understanding was that she would get in her wheelchair and she'd go around and steal people's purses, which is so unlike her, and so it was an experience. Also, one of my favorite uncles just recently died of Alzheimer's, so I'm familiar with it. And of course, I've been in Alzheimer's centers and places now, and it's really an unbelievable thing. I mean, it strikes all ages. Most people think it's just older people, but not necessarily. So
no.
anything you can do to make them feel better and to make them feel alive and make them still feel productive in some ways, I think is really important.
I agree, and you're right. This isn't an old person's disease. There are people in their 40s and 30s and even their 20s that are being diagnosed with this disease. So we better start paying more attention, as a society. Can you tell us in a little bit more detail, what drove you, to leave such a fascinating and successful career in the music business to go ahead and really work and develop the lullaby recordings?
Well, I guess to understand why I left it, you'd have to understand why I got into it. And, of course, when I was young, I was ambitious and motivated by fame and money and ego, and the entertainment industry really is an attractive way to do it, if you think you've got any talent at all. And so I studied all the hits. I thought, well, how am I going to know what a hit song is or a hit record, and how do you do it? And so I studied all the hits for the previous 6 months in all categories of music, to see what they had in common. And I found about 50 things that they had in common as far as structure. But I realized that the most important thing is you have to evoke an emotional response in the listener and to help them feel or express their feelings if you want to get a hit. And they'll buy it and they'll take it home and they'll play it over and over and over and over until you get tired of it. And I also noticed hits only usually last for about 2 or 3 months, and then you do get tired of hearing them, and then you don't want to hear them for a while. The two important things I found was the title is so important, that you make it stick out melodically and lyrically so that the people can remember it. And, you always seem to remember the title of the song. The other thing is first person. Almost all hits are in first person so that listener can be the singer. I mean, you've seen people driving down the interstates with their window up, and you can just see them singing along with something they like, And so I realized that if you could take those same basic principles and, it started with a daycare person saying she needed music for kids in daycares. And, of course, at that time in my life, I didn't really care too much about what they were playing in daycare centers. I was this big-time record producer and songwriter. But I decided it'd be a fun project and thought if I could use the human heart as the rhythm, I wouldn't get so much peer pressure from people saying, well, he's producing lullabies, so he's on the way out.
Uh-huh.
And so I used the human heart, recorded it from the chest, which became a technical challenge, and then it worked its way into the cardiac recovery unit, like you said in the intro there. And I saw these babies cut from the neck to their belly button in tubes and monitors, and it was the most intimidating, humbling experience I think I've ever had. I almost passed out, but when the nurses showed me how the babies would calm down when you played the music just in a few seconds, it scared me in a way. I knew I hadn't done that, and I could feel the presence of God in there. And so that's why I left the music industry. Here was a way that you could use money or make music for good, make music that could help heal. So that's when I got out and started trying to figure out how am I going to spread the word about it, and I started doing television news stories and talk shows and talk radio, and I gave it free to hospitals or organizations if they'd request it to use in their hospitals, and the word spread. And then some hospitals started buying it, and giving it to new moms, and we got it in J.C. Penney's and Eckerd drugstores and Dayton Hudson, Marshall Fields, and we sold a couple of million that way. And then one day we get a call from, within about a 6-month period, we lost all of our national chains, which for one reason or another, and it was just like we were having an emergency meeting, and we said, we're in trouble. And I told the girl, I said, no phone calls during this meeting.
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes into the meeting, she calls me. She said, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to interrupt you, but this woman said she was from the Pentagon. Now, I figured it's one of my friends,
Yeah.
Why would the Pentagon call me? I said, well, you tell the Pentagon I'll call them back. Well, after I got out of the meeting, I called back. I didn't recognize the number. They answered the Pentagon. I like fell out of my chair. I said, maybe they want me to be a spy. Why would the Pentagon call me? And they transferred me to Army Community Service. And this woman said, we heard about your cassette back then. And she said, we understand it prevents infant abuse. You know, crying is the primary trigger for infant abuse, and could you quote us on 50,000? Well, I had to be cool, so I said, well, yes, I'll call you back. I could have quoted her in a minute, you know, but when I called back, and they set us up with as a government vendor, and they ordered 50,000, and then the Air Force ordered, and then the Navy ordered, and so even today we sell to the Army Community Service and new parent support and family advocacy programs for babies. And
how cool is that?
So that's my focus has been the neonatal intensive care units, and there's been research on it, you know, with playing it pre, during, and after circumcision and other things. But what you find out is you almost have to market research like you do a product, or nobody knows, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I had about 35,000 testimonies in my garage from parents.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them, I know this is going to sound funny, but a lot of them would say, it calmed our baby to sleep, it calmed me and my husband to sleep, and it calmed our dog to sleep. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, you know, the baby stops crying and they can go to sleep, you know. And certainly the dog thing, he's just like anybody else. When the baby stops crying, the dog gets a break. So I didn't pay much attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
But where I really first got the idea that the same music, you know, might work on adults, I was on one of those talk shows in Tampa, Florida, and after I got back, a woman had called me and she said she was getting her master's degree looking for alternatives to physical restraints and sedatives in nursing homes. And I'm thinking, physical restraints? I mean, I didn't even know, you know, I'm a rock and roll record guy, what do I know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I sent her the cassettes, and I started thinking about it, and I said, well, why don't I just get music for the 20s and the 30s and 40s, use the same heartbeat, the same principles I used, you know, to craft the lullabies. And that's music when these people were teenagers, and maybe they would appreciate it more, and I won't have any lyrics on it. So I decided to use Moon River, Laura's Theme, Scarlet Ribbons, Amazing Grace, and one other I can't think of right now. And I made an instrumental, and I called that same week I got a call from Lutheran Medical Center in Cleveland, Ohio, and they said, we heard about your lullabies in the pediatric unit. We'd like to try it in the geriatric unit. And so I told her, I said, well, wait till you hear this idea. And I told her, she said, well, we'll try that too. So then I called the cardiac recovery unit at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. I said, how about music for your adults after open heart surgery? And I explained what I was doing. And so she said, well, we'll get permission from the patient, the surgeons, and we'll try it. So I'm all excited. You know, I'm a little bit, maybe a little bit cocky at this point, thinking, you know, I've got these babies all going to sleep. Now I'll get the adults to go to sleep or help them in the intensive care units. So I waited a couple of months, and I didn't hear anything, and I called the cardiac recovery unit, and I said, well, how's it going? And she said, I'm sorry, but she said, we can't use the one you made for adults. So the first thing that goes through my mind is they did something wrong. I mean, how could it miss? Everything's the same. It's the heartbeat. It's just different songs, you know.
Mm-hmm.
She said, well, you know, we bring the people in right after surgery. We've got your cassette player right there by their bed. But a lot of times the anesthetic will wear off before the paralyzation does, so they can see and they can hear, but they can't feel anything and they can't move, and on comes the song Amazing Grace. Mm-hmm. They think they're dying. It doesn't look like heaven, you know.
Uh-huh.
I was so embarrassed. I just didn't even think about that, you know.
Uh-huh.
So, but I wasn't going to give up that easy, so I called Cleveland Lutheran Medical Center and got the nurse, and I said, well, how's it going? And she said, well, I'm sorry, we can't use your adult cassette. I said, Amazing Grace, right? She said, no, the problem's Moon River. I said, Moon River? What's wrong with that? She said, for some it's a love song. For others it's maybe the guy or the girl that got away. We just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so she said, but that little lullaby cassette is just working great. I said, why? What do you think? She said, we're a referral hospital for about a 200-mile radius of nursing homes, and most of the people that we get here didn't have visitors. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, what does that got to do with it, you know? She says, if you don't have visitors, you don't get as good a care. Mm-hmm. Well, that was another rude awakening for me, you know, something you don't think about when you're not. And so she said, when they hear these, they remember these songs were probably the first and most powerful love songs ever written. When these songs were sung a cappella, to people, they were sung with compassion. It didn't matter how good the mother could sing or the dad or the grandma. And they were shown love and affection, security that made you feel safe. They were kept warm as a part of a nurturing, bedtime routine. So she said, they don't feel loved, and this makes them feel loved and safe and secure again, and their long-term memory is better. So it really moved me at the time, but I thought, that'd be too hard, to tell people that these lullabies are it's gonna help you in all these different ways and stuff. And so I didn't really do anything about it that much until 3 or 4 years ago. I got a call from a clinical psychologist at the VA in Austin, Texas, and she said, I want to try these with my Alzheimer's, dementia, chronic pain, hospice people. And she said, I want to get 200 of them, and she got 100 of each version. And later sent me a letter of the different ways it was helping these people, and then I realized, this is what I should do, whether it's going to be hard or not. And I should get this out to assisted living centers and nursing homes and hospitals and places, where it could really make a difference to people. So that's how I got involved in really my focus now is with the adults. I will say this, although I know you didn't want to hear about this, but they are used in 2,500 humane societies and shelters to calm dogs.
No, what I was going to mention was because when I listened to it, I thought, well, this is strange. I mean, because it's just not what you imagine. I mean, it is. It just is kind of strange. And then I thought, well, of course this makes sense. When a new puppy is born and they're struggling, they always tell you go get a big clock and put it under the pillow so they could hear that tick tick tick. And so to me that made perfect sense. And how it would apply, because I mean we all come out the same way, used to being in that womb and hearing that heartbeat, and you can almost feel that heartbeat. I mean, it's just the thumping of it, and we'll play a song here in a little bit so our audience can hear it. But it's fascinating, and it's extremely comforting. And even with the lullabies, I kind of went, well, what's up with that? How's that going to work? But it brings you back to this safe place in time that's really calm. And I was really shocked at how quickly I was able to fall asleep, because a lot of times I'm a flip and a flop, and I check my emails again, and I'm one of those. And I did it more than one time. I tried it, I don't know, probably 5 different times, and each time I woke up in the morning going, wow, I really slept good. What I did find, though, and I don't know if anyone else has found this, that when the CD was done playing, because I didn't loop it, I would wake up.
Right. Did you have repeat on your CD player?
I didn't. At first, I didn't have that. But I was like, oh my gosh, the music stopped, and that's what woke me up. And so then I played the repeat, and then no problem at all. But I thought that was really a fascinating, interesting piece too, that my body knew the difference. And go ahead.
I'll tell you what I think that is part of it. When I was a kid, I grew up in Michigan, Indiana and Michigan, and the snow would, in Michigan in the wintertime, it'll get crusty on the top. Same thing there in Minnesota, I'm sure.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And when you're a kid, you can walk on top of the snow even, you know what I mean? It gets so crusty. But when you're laying in your bed at night and the branches are falling off the trees because of the ice, you know the boogeyman's out there walking around. Your imagination. My dad used to bring a window fan in and turn the window fan on so that it would mask out those limbs falling on the tree. Masking meaning you just couldn't hear them. They weren't as startling to you, and you weren't able to focus on them. music has that same masking effect also. Now, the problem I had with hearing that white noise or that fan back then was that it got to where I had to have it. You know what I mean? Otherwise, I'll hear every little sound. And so when I'd travel a lot, I'd turn a television on a station that wasn't on, and I'd cover up the screen with my coat where I could hear the static, which was really white noise. And so that's the negative part. So I would assume that if you're in a light sleep when that music cuts off at night, then it'd probably be the same thing, or something could startle you awake. You know what I mean? Easier. But if you play it at a real low volume, it's okay to play it online. You don't always have to. And plus, once you're asleep, you don't hear it anyway.
Yeah.
But it is nice to keep out the startle sounds.
Yeah.
I know.
Now, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, you've got them on the CDs and the DVD. Do you have them on can people order them online as a podcast and, put them, I'm probably podcast. I don't know the terminology that you do, so correct me, please. But can they buy them on iTunes as well? Everyone's getting into this fast little pace, deal now.
Downloads, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, on our website you can buy the CDs, or you can buy a download and of both versions, and we've got two versions of it.
Okay.
You also, if you're an organization that like an Alzheimer's Center, assisted living, you can email us and we'll send you one free to use in your facilities. That's kind of how the baby one was spread, and I'm using that. If you get it to the people who need it the most first, they're going to be, number one, more willing to try it because they may be desperate for all kinds of non-pharmacological stuff, right? And then they spread the word. And, the way I look at it is, for me, is even if it doesn't become a big success and all these 70% of Americans who have sleep problems don't buy it, at least I've got it to the people where it can really make a major difference, in their life and in their rest and sleep. And if they don't have to use as many drugs, or if they don't have to use them at all, that's even a more huge plus. So, and it was the same thing with the babies in the neonatal units and pediatrics and in those places. They really needed it there, and the nurses who've really been the champions of the thing were the ones that realized how it could really make a huge difference. So that's why I give them free to use in the facilities. On the new video, which I can tell you about in a minute if you want to, those are also free to organizations that they can play on closed-circuit television. So, but if you want to buy them, you can buy downloads, or you can buy the CDs on our website, which is adultlullabytherapy.com. And you could read more of why I think it works, so well to calm people. The biggest, I think, the hardest part is to get people to listen to it. For instance, I sold some to Fort Detrick, Maryland, for the military, and they hadn't had them 2 days till they called back and ordered more. And I said, well, how did you get these soldiers willing to listen to these lullabies with a heartbeat? And she said it was big-time resistance at first until two of them tried it. Now the word's out. So it's real difficult to get people to believe it until they listen to it. You see, one of the things that makes it different is that these songs, some of them are 400 or 500 years old, and they've been sung and passed down generation after generation, but they were usually sung a cappella. You didn't have any band behind you rocking your kid,
Yeah.
And so when I decided to do the lullabies, which for the daycares, I said, well, we need to reinforce the emotion of compassion in these songs. That's what it's about. And the human heartbeat from the chest, that's where the baby lays its head. And most lullaby recordings never have rhythm instruments, if you ever noticed. It's always, instrumental, and they're usually played on little teensy pianos. And so we're going to really try to reinforce, just like you would a hit record, you want to reinforce the emotion in that singer's voice and the message they're trying to get across. So I think that's the other thing. Adults have never really heard these lullabies performed like this. And there's never been another recording that uses the actual human heart as the rhythm either. So how much that heartbeat really has to do with it, I don't know. Some people think, oh, that's everything. Why don't we just have a heartbeat without the music? I don't think I could handle that. So I think the biggest problem is to get people to listen to it. That's why I come up with my little theory as to why it works on adults. And I think it works for two reasons. One, it works by distraction and by association. And the distraction is that you're comforted by an attraction to a sympathetic compassion. These songs have always been sung to babies, and someone was sympathetic to whatever their need happened to be, whether they were scared or frightened or hurting or whatever. And so you tend to flash back to that same thing when you hear these songs. You tend to identify those songs with those kinds of things, of feeling loved. I mean, these are not romantic love songs, but they're certainly powerful love songs that were sung to calm babies, and they're showing love and affection for those babies and kids. And so that's why, and the melodies are so good. That's why they've lasted. It's funny because your long-term memory gets better as you get older. And so this was introduced to you real early and made positive impacts on your memory. And so when you go back to that, you feel those positive emotions and that feeling of being cared for and so forth. So that you associate those songs with that kind of thing. But the thing that distracts you is that it's kind of like these lullabies were constructed using the basic principles of relaxation. And those principles used in transcendental meditation and on and on and on. And simplicity, repetition, predictability, consistent tempo in the case of music, simple symmetry, and compassion in the singer's voice. And so those are basically things that attract you when you're upset, when you're anxious. It's safe, it's predictable, it's sympathetic, and non-dynamic, so it's very easy to focus on it and forget about what's bothering you. Just distracts you from what's bothering you. So that's the reasons I think it really works so well. Otherwise, go ahead.
I was going to say, why don't we go ahead and listen to one? And what I want the audience to do is, even if you're in your office, just close your eyes. Just take a couple of deep breaths and just block everything out and just take a listen. I think I'm going to, we'll go with London Bridges here, okay?
Okay.
London Bridge.
It's I know
sleep.
for some of for some of you, you know, because it does. I think it takes a little bit to get used to, because it is something that isn't normal for us to hear.
Right.
And the heartbeat really is very powerful. But I know
there's a funny thing about that heartbeat that you'll notice. When it first comes on, you say, "Ooh, that heartbeat's too loud." The singer's supposed to be the loudest thing on a recording. But what happens is, I don't know why, your mind tends to go for the music, and you kind of compartmentalize the heartbeat, and you don't really consciously hear it anymore after a period, maybe after 20, 30 seconds. And it's always the same volume throughout the whole 18 songs, and yet after a while you don't hear it. You just hear the music. So I don't have any idea why, but so it's supposed to be a little louder. You know, you can always adjust the volume of the heartbeat with your bass control on your player.
Mhm. Which makes sense. I just, you know, for me, as soon as I heard it, because I'm used to it now, it just relaxes me. It just it puts me in a different space. And I've got a friend who's got insomnia, just horrible, and I'm gonna send one of them that you sent me to him, and see if that can help him out at all, because he just struggles, you know, with sleep so horribly. And you see these sleep clinics all over the place. I mean, they're just popping up all over the country. Have you approached the sleep clinics at all with this?
In the early days, I went to a sleep disorder center and gave them one, and I learned a lot about how they measure and all that kind of stuff. Personally, I don't think I could ever go into one because I can't sleep on my back. But there's just so many fronts to be on. You don't know what to pursue. Do you know what I mean? When you get all this feedback from different uses and stuff, and so I never really approached them that way. Sleep disorder center, they're there to find out what's wrong, not necessarily to fix it.
Well, but they're the first ones to, you have a sleep apnea contraption,
right,
you know, where you look like Darth Vader and stuff, which is, I mean, it's great, but I mean, I think people, if they had their druthers between having to wear equipment to bed or being able just to have some music plugged in, I mean, my guess is they'd go for the music if it would help, and you know, it would be really interesting for them to do a study on. I mean, they've got all the equipment right there.
Because then they could measure what's going on. You know.
Exactly. So, you know, I would love for you to, you know, approach them, or I might even just stop into the one in Maplewood here and say, would you ever consider, you know, checking this out? And
just see how it affects their sleep.
Yeah, because, I mean, gosh, what a difference that would make. And, you know, if you can get some research behind it to boot, because this, I mean, it's like an epidemic of people not sleeping well. I know for myself, I would have loved it after, this was years ago because my daughter's 25 now, but as soon as I was pregnant, I was up every 2 hours because the baby was up, kicking and moving, and I could not sleep. And then it was a year after she was born before I got a full night's sleep because my body was still used to getting up every 2 hours. And I didn't even realize how sleep deprived I was until I got 8 hours of sleep, and I woke up going, and everybody was shocked. We were up at the lake, and I slept in, and no one, I mean, that was just not what I did. And everyone was shocked, and I woke up, and I'm like, I felt like a brand new person. I knew I was tired before, and I knew I wasn't sleeping, but, you know, you have to do what you have to do, and you keep plugging along. But I literally felt like a brand new person, and, you know, my personality was much calmer and brighter. I wasn't as snatchy, you know, because I got sleep. And, you know, this is huge for our bodies and for our minds, for just being able to fend off disease, you know, to be able to be strong enough. I mean, it's on massive levels. It's just it's a powerful tool that should not be overlooked. I mean, there's nothing to lose for someone to try this. I mean, what's the worst that happens is it doesn't work, but you haven't really lost anything. Go ahead, Terry.
3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You lose about 3 minutes of your time. The biggest competition I have for something like that is drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Too easy, works too quick.
Mm-hmm.
So these have to work quick. You know what I mean? They're
Mm-hmm.
going to have to work quick in the assisted living centers, and they do. But if it's ever going to be a part of protocol where you use that first, it's going to have to be something that the care provider can switch on and whenever it's needed. You know, and don't play it if it's not needed. And
yeah.
With that, I'll tell you an interesting thing I found out. You know, people can listen to an oldie record, and they remember the first time they heard it, who they were with. I mean, they can almost relive that experience.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing about that you know, when the record was a hit, the first time you heard it, you probably heard it for 2 or 3 months because the radio stations were playing it every hour and a half and so forth, and then you got tired of it. You didn't really want to hear it anymore. You got bored with it. If you go back and listen to an oldie station and you hear one of those songs and you have that experience again and it makes you feel that same way, the problem is it gets older quicker. So if you use it, if you find a particular song that a person really loves and it makes them feel good and on and on and on, the problem is if you use it very much, it'll get old quicker. And so you can't use it as much as you might need to use it because it loses its effectiveness so much quicker. But there was a researcher, her name is Sandra Treehop, and she's a psychologist at the University of Toronto, and she devoted her life to studying the musical ability of the human brain. And she concluded that not only do lullabies calm children and adults, but repetitive lullabies are songs that people want to hear over and over again. And her theory is that it's, rather than becoming bored by the repetition, they find comfort in the familiarity of the simple melodies and things. So it's kind of like the more you play it when it's needed, the quicker it works because you become conditioned to calm to it. So that's the nice part, you know, about this particular music, and it's so generic. You know what I mean? Almost everybody's heard one of these songs, if not all 18, at one time or another, or they sang it to their kids or their grandkids, or you know. So it's not something that, you know, when you first think about it, well, this is condescending and this is infantile. I'm going to do that. But once you listen to one of them, you'll see they're not what you thought.
No, it's very, very interesting, and for some of our listeners, it may have been overwhelming, you know, because when you're not ready to go to sleep. But I really encourage you to try this when you're going to sleep, and you know, listen to a song
anxious,
or
no.
Yeah, or if you're anxious, and really, you know, give it a chance. Don't give up on it. Just plug it in and just listen to it and see what happens. Because you could be like a friend of mine who listened to it. And she literally said, she's like, Lori, I have to tell you, I giggled for 20 minutes thinking, oh, this is just silly. You know, this isn't going to help. And she said, oh my gosh. She's like, I have not slept that good ever. She was just amazed. She said, I went out like a light, and she normally doesn't do that. So after she kind of let her ego go and just said, okay, you know, I'm not going to judge this. I'm just going to go with the flow. It worked, you know. But I think like anything, you know, our ego can get in the way and cause a lot of turmoil for us, which is too bad that we let it do that. But you know, I think if somebody has a problem, chances are that's going to be at the root of it. You know, that we're trying to analyze it so much instead of just letting things be and letting things be natural. Because the power behind, you know, just letting things go is absolutely incredible in my mind, anyways. With that, so I think it's very, very, very interesting and very powerful, and I would love to see more people utilize these and see if it can work. I love that it's helping out our vets. I just think that is
that's
so
pretty exciting
important.
to me.
Yeah.
To know that you can help people with PTSD, because they haven't come up with anything very good yet. I'll tell you what I'm working on now. I always know that I've got the problem with people, like you say, are they even going to be willing to listen to it?
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got the problem if it's in an assisted living center or a hospital, or the distribution systems, players, MP3, CD player, what? And so I thought, ooh, I know what they've got. They've got closed circuit TVs in hospitals and assisted living centers where they have their own channels. So I thought, I need a video that can be played 24 hours a day, and then people can choose to listen to it or they can't, or if they're in a waiting room where they're really upset, like a VA waiting room, this is something that will interest them. So I decided to make the music, the soundtracks of a music video, the whole 18 songs on one and then 10 songs on the other, but I would use character-generated famous inspirational quotes and sometimes humorous quotes to get their attention, to get them so they fade in on a black screen for about 10 or 15 seconds, and then they fade out. It gives you time to think about what you just read. And so I kind of sneak the music in on them, they're playing in the background, and this is distracting them from what's bothering them, at least temporarily, excuse me, while they're watching. So I'm really anxious to get more places to try that, and of course those are free to organizations where it applies. Of course they can be played on DVD players and things too, but and on smartphones and transfer it over to MP3, whatever players or whatever you want to play it on. But I think the video thing, I at this point, I'm not sure what the response will be to it. I've had maybe 5 or 6 people that have tried it, in one big VA hospital that may put it on their closed-circuit television. But I thought, here are these famous quotes coming up and so forth, and there'll be somebody sitting in a waiting room and get up and go over to the desk. Will you turn that lullaby music off? Who knows? You know what I mean? I don't know whether you'll run against that or whether people will really get into it. So, but in the rooms, they've got a choice to watch it. So. It's a little different there, but it's pretty exciting, and it's a little bit frustrating. You get a lot of feedback, really positive feedback, and I'm pretty feedback driven, and so you feel like you need to, I need to get it out there. I need to get more people using this. You know what I mean? And then you run into somebody that'll say, I'm not going to listen to lullabies with a heartbeat, or where. Do you have the research? Hey, it either works or it doesn't. You know what I mean? Do you say, what do they got to lose? And so far, I haven't had hardly any negatives. But on the video, I don't know yet. There's some places that are using it. And, again, let's see what happens with that. But I think it's a good idea. I have other ideas too if it works. So, but it's fun. It's a lot different than being in the music business. There you weren't. You were trying to appeal to people's melancholy, sadness, bitterness, pain. Enhance their pain. With your song. And here's a chance to do it different. Back in the music industry, the hardest thing to do is to write a love song. That wasn't sexually oriented, making sex and love synonymous. But here, I already had the love songs. It was just a matter of presenting them in a compassionate way. So anyway, it's been quite an experience for me. I really like it. What a
journey.
I'm excited every day,
Yeah, very, very neat. I was so thrilled to connect with you on LinkedIn and learn more about this product, because I think it's phenomenal. And more and more people are trying to treat things more on a social and an environmental level than with drugs. And I personally think that there's so much we can do to treat symptoms by changing our environment, and this is a real simple way for people to be able to participate in that, and very cost effective, needless to say, and we don't have to worry about contraindications with music. And music is just so so powerful, and you've added a new twist to it. So I think it's brilliant, Terry, and I thank you so much for your work. What is the best way for people to get a hold of you, Terry?
I have an email address, which is Terry at audiotherapy.com. Then I have an 800 number, which is 800-537-7748. And then we have the adultlullabytherapy.com website, which also has the email address and where you can fill out to request, the freebies to the organizations.
Okay.
And with also a little better explanation as to why I think they work, if that helps. And then you can hear 3 songs from each CD free. It may be enough for you. Or you can watch one of the songs from each one of the DVDs. I have a Christian DVD and CD, and then I have a traditional lullaby, Rockabye Baby, etc. kind of songs on the other one. And,
okay.
But, anybody that has other questions also, I'll be happy to try to answer those. So.
Okay. Can you give us that 1-800 number again, Terry?
It's 800-537-7748. If you're calling from outside the U.S., it's 719-473-0100.
Okay. Great. Well, again, I thank you so much for all you're doing, and it just was a pleasure to have you on the show and be able to actually talk with you in person here. Keep up the great work and keep us posted as you develop new products. And like I said, I just might march down to the Insomnia Place next week and see if I can talk to anybody about it. And, you just never know.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see their reaction to it. Again, they're going to say, "Oh, come on."
But we'll never know if we don't try. And
that's
so,
true.
Again, listeners, if you've got connections, if you think there's people that this might be able to help, don't keep it to yourself. Be a vehicle to drive some change. Together we can make a difference in a lot of people's lives by just sharing these simple conversations and sharing, services, products, and tools that we run across that can help one another. So again, thank you so much for your time. I can't believe our hour has just flown by here. So I need to get the show wrapped up, but we will definitely stay in touch with you. Okay, Terry?
Well, thanks, Lori, for having me on. I appreciate it, and I appreciate what you do.
Great. Well, have a wonderful weekend is almost upon us. So we'll talk soon, okay?
Okay.
Okay, bye now.
Bye-bye.
Again, for those of you that are interested in trying to find an Alzheimer's association in your area, you can just go to Google Alzheimer's Disease International or go to www.alz.co.uk. Or if you're looking for a clinical trial, the Alzheimer's Studies.com has a tau trial going on right now. Actually, I think they've got 2 of them. So you can find them on Facebook, or you can go to www.alzheimersstudies.com. And again, I just so appreciate all of your help in terms of spreading the word. If you wouldn't mind clicking on your like button, or if you've got a Twitter account, go ahead and tweet this episode to people or share it with your LinkedIn or other social media groups. Your voice and your clicks make a difference. And together, we're going to change the world. So until next time, we will be in touch. Again, remember our Dementia Chats webinar will be July 9th, and our next show coming up will be next Tuesday as well, and that will be an interesting program. We're going to be talking about the wristband program for dementia in hospitals. We're also going to be talking about some incontinence solutions. So have a wonderful weekend, and the 4th is upon us here shortly. Be safe. Love y'all. Bye.
Hi, I'm Lori LeBay, and I wanted to tell you about Alzheimer's Speaks, which is another great podcast. You see, my own mother lived with dementia for 30 years, and I felt lost. Did you know every 3 seconds someone in the world is being diagnosed with dementia? Odds are it's going to hit your families too. We want to help you connect to services, products, tools, research, and stories so you can be prepared. Please subscribe to Alzheimer's Speaks on your favorite podcast platform.